Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Tables with your host, Rob Bradley,
John Charles Ciccarelli,
James Burrows,
and Damien Hallwood.
Hello and welcome back to Tales from the Tables. We've had August off, pretty much.
Pretty
Hope you guys
much.
got August off as well, yeah. And it's a bit of a special episode actually today because there are two birthdays to celebrate, but the most important one out of those two birthdays though is that our podcast is a year old.
which is insane.
I can help myself. Happy birthday, James.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Birthday
We're singing
man
happy birthday.
joins us today.
We're singing happy birthday.
Yeah.
This is why all our listeners tune out.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
I had nothing better to do today than come and chat with you reprobates. So here we are.
Yeah.
Lovely. What did you get for your birthday, James? What'd you buy? What'd you get?
So I got Star Wars Outlaws from my brother.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I've played a bit of that, and so far I would recommend it. It's very, very good. But
Nice.
I won't waste a lot of time because this isn't a video games podcast, so I won't spend loads of time. But as an RPG, I'm enjoying it immensely. There's a lot of cool little like mini games and like side things that are very cool, and the tracking system between the different sort of gangs and your reputation between them, and them sort of constantly playing you off against one another. It's really engaging. I'm enjoying it.
Sounds like an
Right on.
RPG to me. James,
Yeah.
and this is a Tale from the Tables kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would imagine. I mean, come on, like everyone who plays Dungeons and Dragons, I imagine, also plays video games to some degree, or has an appreciation for them, especially games like that.
Yeah. I think it's rare that you'll find someone that doesn't. I think it is.
Yeah.
I think if you liked the Star Wars RPG, the Galaxy's Edge set, that sort of stuff, I think.
The Old Republic, is that it?
No, the tabletop.
Talking about Edge of the Empire.
Edge of the Empire. I think if you liked the tabletop game and the Edge of the Empire stuff in particular, it is the video game for you because it's pretty much that.
I bet you guys don't remember Star Wars Galaxies, do you?
Ooh.
That was the original.
I remember
RPG,
Star Wars
right?
Galaxies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had it.
I never played
it.
it.
It was glitchy as fuck.
Oh.
It was so bad, and it was dreadful. It had so many bugs in it. It was ridiculous.
Ooh.
But it kind of gave you that early like sort of bit of, oh wow, is this what you could do? This is what you've got, like a whole world to explore, and you could train to be a Jedi Knight. Like, this is amazing. This seems like a really incredible concept. Oh no, blue screen of death. And my computer.
It broke your PC.
Exactly.
I was a big fan of the Kyle Katarn, Jedi Academy, Jedi
Outcast
Outcast games. Those were a blast.
They were my first. I think Outcast weirdly was the first one I like Star Wars game I think I played, followed pretty swiftly by I think the pod racing game that came out.
Oh yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
That was brilliant. That was like an awesome, like the I think the physics and the mechanics of it were really, really good.
Especially for that time.
You had those two, because you had like two like engines that were in front of you. When you turned, it was like the physics of it was really interesting.
That's fun for its time. That sounds really advanced.
Really clever.
Right,
really clever. Cool. So we've had a lot going on at Rolldark recently, haven't we? We've got had the GM Academy that happened, which was a great success. It was a lot smaller than the last one that we did, which was cool. We had 12 people. We were on this massive, like, great big courthouse. It was really cool because we started off with like a couple of talks from the guys. So shout out to Ben, Jordan, and Richard. They gave some really great talks.
Awesome.
And then after the talks, we did a little Q&A. And then after the Q&A, we had lunch. And then the guys basically pitched their afternoon workshops to all the people that came along. And it was really good because we had like a really good even split between the three of them. So Ben was doing like voice lessons. Jordan was doing like a one-shot where he was like covering various different traps and puzzles, that type of thing. And Richard was going over like the world building and how you can sort of like, build a plot into the world that you're creating. And it was just really good. And everyone had a really great time. And
that's awesome.
It was really cool. Yeah, it's really cool. We're gonna do another one like that, I think. because the one we did in Oxford, which you guys came to, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was good, but I think the room was too big, and I think we had too many people, and potentially too many DMs as well. Doing
Maybe,
talks.
maybe.
It split.
Because I
people a bit
remember
too
even
much,
at the very end, I wasn't doing a different thing at the very end. I just did the talks, and I was torn between wanting to go to like 4 different GMs speaking on their sort of side projects and whatnot. It was a lot of fun though.
Yeah, it was good fun, wasn't it? Because I remember when the guys were playing the games, we were doing a Q&A while they were playing the games.
Right.
And it was, I remember Jordan saying to me, well, he said to me at the last one, he was like, it was really a shame because I wanted to be part of that Q&A, but I was running a game.
But he was still finishing his game.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think scaling it down rather than going so big and bold is probably the way to go.
I had the opposite happen to me. I had a game running towards the end, and it sort of drifted away from the table and to the Q&A.
Ah, right. Right.
The group sort of kept being drawn into the questions that were being asked, and eventually that sort of became the thing. So yeah,
I think I abandoned my game as well. I did my talk, and then I think we went and did the Q&A. And it was it was good.
We should do some like YouTube live stuff with you guys doing.
That could be fun.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah,
like a follow up or a post, GM Academy Day or whatever. Yeah.
Or just something completely different with you guys.
Yeah. And now for something completely different.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Just the podcast dudes or whoever else wants to be involved.
Well, I might be. I'll tease this because maybe it'll actually hold me accountable to continuing to commit to do it. But I've been clearing my office space out, and I tend to like renovate it into like a full D&D room. Going to use foam to imitate like castle bricks on some of the walls. I'm going to use a projector to do like a projected wall. Oh. I'm going to try and do that thing. I'm torn between either doing like a leaf covering over the ceiling with LED lights behind it, or doing a cloud covering the roof with LED lights behind it, and then like the sort of Hogwartsy style candles hanging down from it, because I've seen people do that for Halloween and it looks kind of cool.
It looks awesome, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I'm going to try
fishing line and push pins is what I learned to make that happen really well.
I'm going to need so much poster board, so much EVA foam, but I'm going to try and give it a go. So what I will try and do is record the process of creating this D&D room and DIYing it all, and we'll see how that turns out. But I've got a load of desks. Fun. I've got a load of desks that I don't use anymore that I need to shift out of there because they're all plain white IKEA, which doesn't really give off a medieval vibe.
D&D vibe.
You want to get the desks from Amazon. There's like I've got them here actually, and they're really, really good. They're pretty cheap. They're not like massively expensive, but they look the part. They're like proper rustic looking, like wooden with metal, with really like brushed metal sort of chair legs and stuff.
Yeah,
they're really they're quite cool and quite like sturdy, and they don't look like an office, which I hate that whole so dull, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed.
I just mentioned about the cloud thing. I actually saw that literally yesterday. We were going around nurseries, doing the whole like much to my dismay of find out how much they bloody cost, which is like
a lot. Yeah.
God. But this one nursery we went to look at, they had this this great big sort of tall wooden chair, and it was massive. It's like great big wooden chair, and then around it there was all these like bits where you could like sit, where like kids could like sit down and really sort of enjoy the story, as it were. And I was like, oh great. I was like, oh, you have like story time, and you sit down and you tell stories. And they were like, they're like, well, we do, but we also have people in professional storytellers that come in and tell the stories. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, it's like a big like thing at the minute. Like apparently, like professional storytellers go and read children's stories to kids around nurseries. And I was like,
I can do that.
I can do it. I can do it.
I went into my little boy's school. They do an initiative where they have a secret reader, and all the parents have to sign up to it and get selected. And then at a random point in the year, you come in and you read some stories to the class, and the kids have no idea which parent it's going to be until they turn up.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah, and I went in and read a couple of stories for my little boy in his class, and it was a joy. It was really great.
Yeah, that sounds lovely.
Yeah,
as long as you can somewhat have the right to refuse opting into that, because some people are are natural storytellers, and then there are some people that are just not good storytellers.
Yeah, right.
Just read everything in a monotone. Can you imagine? Just put kids off reading and stories forever.
Yeah. It would be amazing if one of the dads was like Samuel L. Jackson coming in and reading the book and just cracks open the book.
Like smashes it out of the park.
Yeah.
And Morgan Freeman, he's just like, whoa. It's just like all the kids are just asleep within 5 seconds.
Exactly. Like, perfect.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of news going on.
Yeah.
There is a lot of news.
Yeah.
I know. We got to do highlights.
It's going to be highlights. It's going to be it's going to be impossible to do this and not take up multiple episodes of the podcast to cover all of this stuff. What's the
main news that's got you excited, Damien? Let's start there.
There's a huge amount of just specifically D&D news. Just that alone. Both good and bad. There was a D&D Direct where they announced a bunch of stuff upcoming, including obviously a recap of the new books, the new core books.
Right.
They've
Project
also announced
Sigil, right?
Project Sigil, which is their virtual sort of 3D tabletop akin to sort of a Baldur's Gate 3-esque approach to a tabletop simulator. That's sort of the best way I could describe it.
Okay, that's cool.
It's pretty cool looking. I've talked at length about it. I have some reservations about the potential cost, but it looks cool.
It looks really cool. I'm suckered into it by the visuals alone. Yeah.
Where have you guys got this from? Is there like a link or anything you can put?
It's on D&D. I think if you go to D&D Beyond, they probably have that promo video, like I think still living on the homepage. And if not, I'm like signed up for their newsletter, and I know I got it that way.
Yeah, they did.
It's not reading my newsletters.
They did a full live play with Abria Iyengar GMing the game for a few people, including a couple of the voice actors from Baldur's Gate 3 with their characters, because you can actually get those characters as tokens, like physical miniatures, digital miniatures in the
physical
game.
Looking digital miniatures,
Physical looking digital miniatures. That's a
Karlach and Astarion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
They were their big highlights.
It's a fun live play, and they showed off Sigil running. They showed it in action, and it does just look sort of like tabletop simulator with the miniatures don't animate, they just sort of move around the table like a miniature. But the spells and effects and things do animate, and that's obviously cool. The map as you build it looks very very isometric RPG. So it remains to be seen how much use it will get and how much use I will get out of it, and how much it will potentially cost, because there is a world in which that would be monetized to the point of of just unusability.
The point of no return.
However, a nice segue here. The fans of Dungeons and Dragons are a vocal bunch, and it is not uncommon for Wizards of the Coast and those surrounding it to backtrack on things when we shout loud enough.
Which I don't.
I will say right now, it's not really the best way of doing things, and it sets a dangerous precedent. It did with Zack Snyder. It did with everything that this has happened with. It sets a dangerous precedent to just have the internet shout at a company until they backtrack on something, even if I agree with the reason they're doing it. it sets a dangerous precedent for the future.
Yes, agreed.
However, Wizards of the Coast were talking about how the 2014 content, rules and spells and items and all those things will be handled going forward on D&D Beyond, which was not popular. The original idea was to use the homebrew mechanic and basically add stuff yourself. It's basically like go and do it yourself. And obviously the internet went and then they have backtracked
specifically
on it.
Me, in case you were wondering. That was the exact sound I made. I went like Kermit. I went waving my arms around.
They backtracked on it hard, and now they will be adding the 2014 content to D&D Beyond, including spells and magic items, and you will not have to use the homebrew tool.
It was trying to force you effectively into only using the new updated rules unless you went through a very big rigmarole. And luckily now you can have your drop-down options of which one you want to use. They were like, we heard you loud and clear. And we're like, good.
it's so interesting, isn't it? That's it's like they're just going, yeah, we just want to make money every year. We just want to keep making money, and that's all we care about. Really, we don't really give a shit about our community, and unless they complain.
Yeah.
And it's like that's kind of the wrong way to go about it. Why don't you just listen to your community and just be like, okay, Dungeons and Dragons is enjoyed by people who are have got various different size wallets. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's make
Right.
it accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just like, and have those amazing things that are a bit more expensive that people will want to pay for and be like, yeah, great. I've got a bit of money. I can pay for this and buy that and have that kind of experience. Great. But you shouldn't really lose out. You shouldn't really gain anything extra, really,
Exactly. Right.
by that.
It does.
It might just be a bit more of an interesting experience for you. But at the same time, it's like you can still have, theatre of the mind. Here's the books. Isn't this great? You buy them once. That's it. Done. And they're affordable. That's
Right.
it.
Right.
It might seem obvious, but it does work. The point you're making there, Rob, I saw it happen with Games Workshop and Warhammer for years. I mean, I've been collecting it for years and years and years and years, and for the longest time, specifically with learning the rules and how to paint your miniatures, it was like forbidden knowledge.
Yeah.
You would get these incredible pictures of these miniatures, and then underneath it would show 2 paints, and it would be like, you need these paints to make this. And it's like, no.
You need a lot more than that.
Yeah, that's not going to work. That doesn't compute. And they just wouldn't talk about it. And then you'd go to the game stores, and the guys would just sort of make the rules up to win the game and just sort of bully you into losing the game rather than actually teach you the game. And not in every case, but in many cases, it was a very weird environment to be in.
That sounds very toxic. I don't know.
It was.
Really?
But then, in the last decade or so, it really has turned around quite a bit. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the popularity of 40k and Age of Sigmar and the various properties of Warhammer has likewise increased.
Mm-hmm.
Because more people can get into the hobby. Now, it obviously helps that there are a lot more people around the world now teaching you how to paint and how to play themselves, even without Games Workshop getting involved.
Right.
So
Freudian slip there.
Yeah, Freudian slip. It's surprising how effective it is for the company to just go, here's how it works, and here's how to make it accessible.
Becomes its own self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so.
It's like I've checked out with Warhammer because I can't handle how frequently you have to buy the core rulebook. Like they just keep giving like what edition is it on now? Is it like
10th edition, I think.
Wow.
It's a long way through. Yeah, it's a long way through.
And that's really annoying because I bought like a massive army, Space Wolf army, had all the what's it called, the Space Marines and everything else. And they brought out the and literally then like a new codex came out, a new thingy came out, and they were like, oh, now you need the Primus models to have like Space Marines. And I was like,
oh, that's how that works. Ooh.
I was like,
while their approach to rules and painting and things has improved a great deal, their release schedule for their rule systems is not so great. I mean, there was literally
models now that mean nothing, or that just look stupid on the battle. They clearly look like older models.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always for them updating.
Love into, and now it's like if I was to ever go against another Space Wolf army that had Primus models, they're like double the size of the Space Wolves who I have, who are exactly the same thing. Almost, but bigger, but not. It's like what? It was a clear like fuck you.
And correct me.
I will. I mean, I'll butt up against that a little bit. I do see they were in an awkward position because for years they showed the Space Marines as being these huge guys in the artwork next to Imperial Guard that were like half the size, and the miniatures were about the same size as each other. So for years the fans were begging them to make bigger Space Marines, and then they made bigger Space Marines, and rather than just make bigger models and keep it the same, they decided to in canon explain why the models were bigger, which
Oh,
then
really?
threw two separate camps out into the world of no, it doesn't make any sense, and people who are like, oh, I love this new story and I'll never play old Space Marine, and of course then those two groups butted heads. And I mean, I'm all for updated miniatures. If tooling for miniatures is getting incredible these days, and with 3D printing, it's starting to become incredible what you can do with miniatures. So I'm all for them updating miniatures, but there was I'll give you a perfect example before we probably move on from Warhammer. The last edition change, there were army rule books, because each army has their own rule book, which makes sense because there's so many miniatures. There were army rule books for the previous edition that came out within a week of the new edition's book releasing.
Ooh, yeah.
What's that all about?
That's tough.
It was, it's not great. It's not great. You shouldn't be waiting an entire edition to get the proper rules for your army.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
No.
It's friggin' awful.
It kind of reminds me of, in a weird way, like the way that World of Warcraft raiding kind of goes, where you could very easily and quickly get outdated because of a new piece of content, right? They launch a new raid and suddenly all the work that you've put in and all the many hours you've put in is rapidly outdated. And you need to buy into it more to keep up. And in the case of WoW, it was a subscription unless you're buying expansions. But it sounds like in the case of Warhammer, you literally needed to buy more armies, bigger armies, more pieces, And how many factions are there? Because you said there was a rule book per army. There's a lot, aren't there? Even amongst just the Space Marines, there's
some
several.
armies. Some armies even have sort of internal separations in terms of how you can play them as well.
Sure, I bet. Right, because you're what I was just watching the trailer for the new video game that's dropping, Space Marines 2, and they were talking about there's the Space Marines and then there's the weird red armored zombie ones. What are they called? Like the Dreadwolf Space Marines or something like that? Not Dreadwolf.
There's Chaos Space Marines.
So, yeah. It is. You're right. Just Chaos. Yeah. I have my brain is mixing several different fandoms right now.
There's dozens of Space Marine chapters, dozens of Chaos Space Marine chapters. Then there's all the alien species,
Sure.
Eldar, Dark Eldar. I know they're not called that anymore. Don't at me.
No.
Tyranids.
Is it the Drukhari now? Yeah.
Yeah, Drukhari. Orcs. There's loads and loads and loads and loads. So yeah, it's an infinite hobby, and there's always room for one more army.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if you look at Magic the Gathering, Warhammer, what else?
Just on like a collection model basis, you mean?
Yeah, like there's like I know that there's, because like when I used to work in the city in London, they like the guys who ran my company used to talk about Citadel miniatures and be like how like a genius business model it is.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Same with they've created an economy.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Magic the Gathering. You've got an economy. The cards will go out of date, new cards will come out, and they're all worth exactly the same. And on the base, they're just pieces of cardboard. But the value is what they put into it and say this is the value in the community of what this card can do. And then they control how many cards they produce, but they actually have the same number. They just sort of pretend that there's this economy that exists.
Oh yeah,
that doesn't exist. And it's like, and we just buy into it because we love it so much. Evil bastards.
I often regret not getting into Magic the Gathering because of its enduring popularity, and I am sometimes so happy I never did, because I'd be so much poorer today.
The thing is with it though, it is good. Like, as you guys know, I love Magic the Gathering.
Sure.
I play historic, so I've got my own decks that I've built based on all the cards that have ever existed, that have ever come out, and I've built my decks from all those cards, and those are my like killer decks. I've got like 3 of them that are like you go up against them, you're pretty much going to die. But you can only play against other people who've also got historic decks.
Right. Because if you come up against somebody with a more modern deck or a newer deck, it's nope.
Yeah, exactly. So
So
like in the modern and the standard decks that come out, they get changed every year, twice a year. They get swapped over. So if you're somebody who wants to be current and wants to be into it, it's like you're just constantly spending money.
Let's not pretend that D&D is immune from this.
No, it's not.
Well,
No,
I have-
especially now. We're here
It
at
felt
a crossroads. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
standing at the intersection of a very interesting time too,
Yeah.
with the new rules coming out and seeing who's going to adopt and who's going to stick with legacy.
Well,
They're
that's
trying to make it, aren't they? They're trying to make it that way.
kind of my point here.
Oh, yeah.
One thing I really appreciated about 5th edition for the first few years was that for the longest time, it was just the player's handbook, the monster manual, and the dungeon master's guide.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would release adventures. And over time, that crept back into one of the big problems I think 4th edition had, with more and more and more books being integral to the way you play, rather than here's a story, you need the other 3 books to play it.
Right.
With a few additional extras inside just to be unique to the adventure.
Yeah.
And that crept in with, I think, things like Volo's Guide initially.
Xanathar's probably a little bit.
Xanathar's and Tasha's. And then
Tasha's was the biggest offender.
Yeah.
Then it steamrolled into having too many books. And already, as part of D&D Direct, they've announced more books coming in.
That's right. Good segue.
2025. It's almost as if I've been doing this for a while.
Presumably not adventure books then either. They are.
There is a dragon anthology.
Right.
Which is,
I thought we had one of those.
I mean, we just had a dragon book.
we
exactly,
did.
Not that long ago.
You're not wrong, Rob.
And
so rare.
surprisingly, this one did sort of...
cellophane.
Yeah. This one did sort of surprise me, because we've talked about how the fact that Greyhawk is the default setting for the Dungeon Master's Guide. That's the inbuilt campaign setting that you're getting as part of it.
That's nice.
Now, we're getting a Forgotten Realms source book.
Oh, right, okay.
In 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, I'm pretty sure in the video they mentioned it would be one of several Forgotten Realms source books, because
That's true.
Forgotten Realms is too big to do in one book.
I quite like that. I think that
I understand it
because I dig that, because I'm all about the lore. I love all that shit.
Yeah, I get it.
I'll literally soak all that up. Like that's my bedtime reading sorted. Do you know what I mean?
I'll be fine if that's all it is.
Visit you and like read to you at your house, Rob. He'll be like, so a fun fact about the drow is that their pee tastes like orange juice.
Amazing.
I worry.
like that's AMSR shit. I'm just like, tell me about. It tastes like orange juice. Amazing.
I really worry that this is going to be what we've just talked about. That I worry that the Dragon Anthology is going to have a load of subclasses in it, and the Forgotten Realms book is going to have a load of subclasses in it. And
if it sells, Damien.
Do you guys ever use D&D Beyond to build your campaigns?
Not the campaign, no.
I don't know.
I know they have a great tool to use. I don't use it. I'm a little bit more traditional in my approach of building stuff.
So I do use it, and whenever I'm typing out the thing and I want to do a little link to a monster, I'll go, oh great, or I'll be typing it out. I'll go, okay, this encounter will be like, there'll be a really good like monster in this area, and it needs to be, say, a desert sort of dwelling monster of some kind or whatever, and I'll maybe Fae, I don't know. I'll type that into D&D Beyond, and it'll come up with a list of monsters.
Yeah,
and most of them I don't have because they're from other source books, which is clever. But you can't buy them unless you buy the books. But before, you used to be able to buy them.
Yeah, you could buy individual monsters or like a set of monsters from a certain book. You could just buy the bestiary sections.
Was really nice.
But now I'm going to drop a link in this chat that's about to change your world, and you can't tell anybody, including our listeners, what it is.
Cool. You had me at Rob.
So yeah, Dungeons
had my attention. They're clearly going to tell me something that's illegal or
highly taboo.
Where is it? Come on. Oh, there it is. Sweet.
Ooh. So Dungeons and Dragons is getting a load of new source books into the first year of its life, which is cool, but concerns me for the reasons I've stated. We're getting Project Sigil. Dungeons and Dragons is also getting it's appearing in FanFest evenings at Universal Studios Hollywood.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So if you'd heard about the sort of Horror Nights the Halloween Horror Nights that they do in Universal Studios. They now do these fan fest ones as well, which are less horror themed.
I went to
And
that. That's fun.
yeah, in spring we're getting Back to the Future, Dungeons and Dragons, and Star Trek as part of specifically Universal Studios Hollywood Fan Fest
Wow,
events.
very cool.
We also got an announcement for a animated anthology series based on video game properties, which is called Secret Level.
Ooh.
And
yes, I've seen the trailer for this. It looks incredible.
It does look great.
I'm going to avoid going into the video gaminess of it and why it's so incredible, because I could be here all day. But it looks incredible. And it's got Tiamat in the trailer.
It does. There's a very brief frame that I shared with you guys. I was like, I see the 5 heads. Don't you know fooling me? I see her.
So D&D is coming into Magic the Gathering 2 with a set Magic the Gathering cards, which features, surprise, surprise, Asterion and Karlach, as well as some classic monsters.
Sick.
Recently, Luke Gygax posted on Facebook a copy of Time magazine with Dungeons and Dragons, the game that changed the world, on the front cover.
Ooh.
Wow. D&D is exploding into the cultural zeitgeist. If it hasn't already, just in the upcoming few months, it's going to be visible on everything. It's going to be everywhere.
I think that we've hit an interesting point where I get to see a lot of people that are not in that world a lot because of the improv show we do, and people just come to be entertained, right? And when they ask what I do, for many years they were like, "Ooh, what's Dungeons and Dragons? What's D&D?" And now they're like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of D&D." Maybe they don't play it, but at least it's starting to seep into a wider pool of knowledge, you know. And people no longer think I'm some weird sadomasochist when I tell them I'm a dungeon master. They now pretty much associate that term with the game. So it's getting in there. I think a big part of this was that film that came out last year with Chris Pine, because that was a big blockbuster headliner for a long time. But there's other things too, and like you said, now we've got the Hollywood stuff going on. So who knows?
Yeah, we normally get in August. It traditionally year after year, Rolldark's been going 4 years now, and August has always been a big lull of a month. Like, we don't get any inquiries. There's hardly any games for obvious reasons. It's the summer, right? This last August, we've had like over 30 inquiries, and like loads of stuff has like come through, and I'm like, where the hell does this all come from? This is bonkers. Like, normally this is like, excuse me. To be fair, the summer in England has been pretty crap, but it's all the same kind of stuff that people are saying. It's all like, never played Dungeons and Dragons before, would really like to get into it, can't get our head around the rules to be the DM, or all of us are too shy to be the DM, or we don't quite understand the role of the DM. That seems to be like a big thing, right? That's running through all the inquiries.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's definitely taken off. Like, it's taken a long time to get there, but it is definitely getting there.
There is a new starter set coming too, to introduce new people to the revised rules. Heroes of the Borderlands, which will be a brand new starter set with all the kit and caboodle inside that you need to start playing. We've seen several of them over the life of 5th edition.
Nice, yeah.
So there's another one of those coming. Pretty much finally, Wizards of the Coast have announced some really interesting third-party creator partners recently. To come to D&D Beyond, they've announced Ghostfire Gaming, Dungeon Dudes, MCDM, Kobold Press, Free League, Hit Point Press, all coming to D&D Beyond content. So they're reaching out to third parties even more, which is great to see.
Weirdly, it's finally started becoming more of D&D Beyond, if you think about it. It's like finally a little bit beyond just plain D&D. And sure, it's still the system, but people are creating this content with their own systems and rules in mind. If you look at some of the MCDM stuff and the fact that Flea Mortals is on there, Matt Colville's latest monster book, that too, Rob. Like, that whole book is designed for an upcoming new system. And when they said, they were like, "Oh yeah, it's on D&D Beyond now," I was like, Really? I was totally surprised.
It's very
I
cool
would
to
have
see.
expected there. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So
Fab.
D&D, I mean, it's swelling to a point of global conquest at this point. Let's hope that the success continues.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it's gonna. I think you're gonna find that there's gonna be a lot of people that will be pulling away from the like sat down playing computer games, that type of thing. Because I certainly like the way I've kind of always approached D&D is I've always loved the fact that I'm not sat in front of a screen, which I know is like really counterproductive because Rolldark is mostly made up of people playing online in front of a screen. But the face-to-face element of D&D is like the thing that is just so appealing to me, that whole like getting together, setting the atmosphere together with your friends, making it really cool and going on an adventure and collaborative storytelling. It just really appeals to me, that whole element. And it takes you away from just being sat down watching a film, or it gives you so much more. And I think there's going to be more. There's definitely going to be more and more people that want to have a community and want to be brought together with people, because the world at the moment is going, in a bit of a scary direction. And I think a lot of people will want to seek comfort from one another, and what better way than to escape this world into our imaginations collectively and be with our friends,
For sure.
It rings true.
I've got a Tale from the Table later is a perfect example of one of the reasons I love D&D.
Yeah, I was going to say, talking of escaping into our imagination, do we have Tales from the Table? Because I certainly do.
I bet you bloody do. Yeah. So, yeah. Just to kind of, I imagine this is going to be roll-up marches, James.
Oh, yeah,
right?
100%.
Okay, cool. So, for anyone who's listening doesn't know what roll-up marches is, we kicked off a subscription-based basically it's like an open world, isn't it, where you can I really struggle to explain it, because I know it's like
it's a complicated concept. I mean, it's a lot going on. Yeah,
I would say it's sort of like an MMO, like a tabletop MMO essentially, where you inhabit this world with other player characters, and you can you can go on adventures with any of them, and you organize yourselves. We have sessions available most nights of the week, I think, and you pick a night you want to play D&D, and you go off with the other players who want to play on the same day or play with you, and you go off and you'll have a DM to run an adventure for you. But unlike a video game MMO, you have a lot more control over the world and input. So for the Rolldark marches, the players are slowly sort of building this frontier town. I know one group have sort of created a tavern. One of my players has started a shop, and another one of my players is starting some other kind of business. They haven't quite settled on it yet, I don't think, but Friday night I think I'll have that finalised from them. So it's really exciting. They're slowly sort of learning about this new continent. So because essentially they've come to this new continent and they're setting up a town. So they're exploring sort of untouched wilderness and finding out more information as they go. So we're building the world sort of with the players. We have a certain amount of information that we know going into it beforehand, and we can sort of curate adventures around that, and maybe some big event pieces that will come up that will hopefully involve like the whole community. Avengers style, which I think someone's already sort of pointed out in the Discord. Are we doing like Avengers styles team ups at some point? That'd be really cool with like a couple of DMs and like a load of a massive group of players. And I think we are pretty keen to do that at some point. So
I love the idea of having guest stars as well, like having like NPCs that are just played by like one of us, like one of the Rolldark like team. Just suddenly
that'd be a lot of fun.
Game just like there.
I was asked about that recently. Actually, my players asked if I was going to come in as a PC at some point.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Do it.
It should. It'd be fun. It's a really great concept, because it's what is it, $37.99 a month for the subscription. And you can join as many games as you like, and there can be up to like, you're looking at like over a good well over like 30 hours of D&D you could get if you were like available to do like every night, because there's a DM that's available most nights or most days.
Well, I think
all we need is another lockdown, another pandemic, and all the time.
That's what we need. We need a global pandemic, and this will just kick off balls. Well, I'll even subscribe. I'll be like, yeah, get me in there. Get me in there, right?
Well,
I'll get the
I think
chemistry
even
out,
if
guys.
you
I'm working on it.
I'll start Rolldark in the world.
Be amazing.
Well, I think even if you just even if you just join 2 or 3 games a month using it, like it's still worth the subscription because you'll be saving money. So, yeah,
Yeah, and you feel part of something as well because you're all building it together, right?
yeah,
It's like,
exactly. Yeah, it's a really cool idea that I know we've wanted to sort of get off the ground for a while now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's nice to sort of finally get it going. There will
I think
be some teething problems.
yeah,
We've
absolutely.
yeah, but I think we're sort of getting on top of that in the admin, and I feel like actually weirdly, the more people are involved in it, the easier it will be to keep on top
Absolutely.
of on top of something
So,
because you're less.
sign up.
Yeah, so sign up. Help us with our note taking.
Yeah, no. It's definitely one of those things whereby, you know, because we were literally banding around how the hell we were going to get this off the ground and how we were going to make it work, and then I just sort of realized, actually, do you know what? We just need to do it and just see what happens, you know, and just go with it and just go, okay, right, how do we improve this? How do we improve that? Okay, this happened. We had this problem, and there was a bit of a continuity issue between this place and this place, like what happened this week, for example, James. Like it was like, you know, that can happen. And all we got to do to fix it is just communicate and just communicate with each other and make sure that we iron out any problems, and that's it. You just
iron it out as you go, basically.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, exactly.
Like anything, sometimes you just have to start and see where it takes you, and if it's a little retroactive fix, you do so. But cool, it sounds really awesome. I unfortunately have a really weird availability for it. I'm only available in like the middle of a Wednesday afternoon usually. But the idea of like popping into other games, kind of seeing how it works, maybe like start guest starring as an NPC, that sounds like fun. Probably be a great way to like kick it off for me. So yeah,
I think the town definitely needs a village idiot. So I'm quite happy to rock up as a village idiot, just to like mess up some stuff, like kick off at the bar or whatever. Just be like, "Who's it? What's going on here? Who are you? Here, why you all got weapons in there? You think you're all tough? Yeah, what's this? What's yours all about?" Just like really, really mess up.
I think I've met that NPC on a bus
that makes me realize. That makes me realize I've been mostly in villages surrounded by idiots because they all sound like that. To think of all the different homes I've been to.
My partner Charlotte once came back from a hypno medium hypnotist medium person. Basically told her that she used to be like a choreographer and on like a dance like thing and like in Paris and all this kind of in her past life and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, why is it you're never just like some random dude in a past life?
In a past life, you were incredibly
unimportant. You were really unimportant. You didn't do much. You just like lived in a house. You didn't own a house. You just like some dude. You lived, you died. That was it.
Surfer.
You were like some romantic character. Like, is it?
You're an accountant. You led a very boring life.
You counted other people's money.
I'll tell you why, Rob. Because it doesn't sell. You don't talk to your friends about it and tell other people about that medium. If you're like, yeah, it turns out I was just some random person who did nothing.
Or like like an absolute horrific criminal. None of that. None of that.
Real bad.
Just like you were something like you used to work in a chocolate shop and you had like this fantastic. It's like no, you used to be a thief. And you got your arms. You had, in fact, that's a bit.
You spent 75 years of your life in jail.
Yeah. You never found a way out, and you just died of starvation. So, there you go. That was your life. Fun.
Anyway.
So, Tales from the Tables, cool. So, James, what do you have for us from Rolldark Marches?
Well, so my players rocked up on this new continent. And were approached by another recent addition, who was a logging company, who had some of their staff going missing in a forest just north to the town of where they were. So off they went, bravely going where no man had gone before, presumably. And they found an aurochs, like a huge hairy bull type thing, with its leg trapped in this snare. All covered in spikes and buried in the ground. Unbeknownst to them, they were being closely observed the entire time by dryads that live in that side of the forest. And luckily for them, they decided to help the noble beast, which was quite difficult for them because they kept failing a lot of their their ability checks to try and get this poor creature's leg free.
Oh,
So eventually they do that, and release it off into the wild. So we'll have to see if I can find a way, as I intend to, of bringing that creature back to help them in a future adventure, or if not them specifically, maybe other players who end up in that area of the forest. I think that'd be quite cool. Have that call back.
Get that party a scroll of awaken so they can use it on that specific oryx, and now he has an intelligence and can start like an oryx tribe that will help them at random moments and just charge in during the middle of a battle 35 sessions later. They're like, hey, it's that cow we freed.
Precisely. Yes, so they found the remains of the logging camp that they were looking for. A horrific crime scene investigation ensued, as there were a lot of blood, a lot of sort of personal effects and stuff scattered in the boughs of trees leading off into the forest. So pursuing that, they encountered the dryads who'd been watching them through the forest for quite some time, and so they decided to aid them. It turned out that a treant had gone rogue after the loggers had cut down some sacred trees. There was also some hints of dark magic going on, as they encountered some mist that sort of carried ethereal fey voices to them, giving a hint of what happened. Finally, I had them fight this treant, and they, I think, had some of the best planning I've seen in a D&D combat for quite some time, where they baited it into a narrow ravine using prestidigitation to make pieces of wood smell like the bark of the sacred trees that he was angry about being chopped down. So they baited it into
smart.
I was surprised by it as well. No offense, Luke. But they baited it into this really narrow ravine, and then from either side of the top, they were throwing flaming torches down and fire bolts as treants are vulnerable to. I think it was a treant sapling, but they're vulnerable to fire, which means double damage, which is nice. It's one of the only times where I do like it when a monster's got a vulnerability of some kind, because it does make the combat a bit more interesting if you can, like, we found a weakness for it. But not enough monsters have weaknesses, which I realise is sort of the opposite of what we've sort of been saying recently, where, well, the monsters don't have enough stuff they can do, they're not deadly enough. But also at the same time, I want them to be weaker in some ways as well. Like, make them stronger in some ways, but weaker in other ways.
That's what makes them fun.
Because it makes it makes them more interesting to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's
so many thoughts on
strength,
this particular topic. Yes,
it makes them more interesting to fight.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome though. The treant thing. James, not to steal the thunder here, but speaking of Luke and the Rolldark Marches game, he reached out to me because he was available on a Wednesday slot, and I was like, yeah, just so you know, though, I'm planning on having my very first session in Rolldarkia, where you are trapped in the dungeon of a mad mage named Bames Juros. And rather than setting up any puzzles or escapes or anything like that, he's just trying to get you to play the Game of Thrones board game, and you have to survive hours upon hours of infinite torture from the Game of Thrones board game. For those of you who don't know, this is an inside reference to what happened during the previous Rolldark Fest, where James, Luke, and a couple of other DMs and of us, I think we had Jordan and Anna with us as well. We all were in an Airbnb, and we were like, "Oh, let's have a board game night," prior to, playing games for 9 hours the next day. And you brought the Game of Thrones board game, James, and it was, I think we were like, yeah, we can start with that and maybe do some other games, because we had a large selection. And then we ended up playing just that for about 5 hours. It was incredible.
Yeah. It's a long game. none of us, including me who bought it, remembered the rules perfectly or at all well. So yes, it was I think a painful experience for
It
many.
was
It's a good game.
joyfully painful experience, really.
I mean,
at the
it's
end
a
of
good
it,
game.
at the end of it, it was exactly like that meme where, at the very end, you're like, but did you have a good time? And they're like, yes, actually, man, when we found out that we could do this, it was great. Yeah, it was brilliant. And I think Luke's response to that was something along the lines of, holy Christ on a bike. So there you have it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Tales from the Tables, I have a couple of just a shout. One is just a shout out, really. It was one that unfortunately got lost in a previous episode. So I've been very lucky to have several of my ongoing players dial in from various countries around the world to continue playing our campaigns, which is always very humbling to have.
That's awesome.
Yeah. America, Singapore, Europe. In this particular example, it was Europe. One of my players was doing a bit of a European tour and called in from their hotel. But because they were staying with other people and they wanted to let them get some sleep, they actually called in from the bath/shower of the hotel room.
Amazing.
And played a full session from there, which is really, really cool. So thank you very much. You know who you are. Thank you for enduring what I can only imagine to be fairly uncomfortable few hours of gaming in a bathtub, as well as the reverberation of your own voice trying to be quiet. But it was deeply appreciated to have you there, and it was very, very humbling.
We could do a whole episode on the weirdest places we've ever played D&D, I'm sure. Right? Yeah. I'm trying to think of it. I know I've played D&D on the road before. Pure theater of mind, I think we had one person with a dice rolling app on their phone for when we needed to roll some dice. But we were just driving up to the Renaissance Fair. We had an hour and a half to kill, and we started playing a game of D&D. And it was a blast, But I remember very specifically my friend failed a stealth check from hiding from some guards in a hallway in a closet, and we entered combat. It was bizarre and weird and so much fun. And a lot of it we weren't even doing with stats; we were just kind of making it up as we go, which was great. But yeah, I'm sure people have. Hey, this is a great way for engagement. If you've had a very unique place that you've played D&D and want us to share it on the next podcast, please hit us up on our Discord, because we will include it, because we love hearing from everybody.
Or in the Discord for the podcast chatter, and we'll talk about some of the most interesting ones for sure.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss, because it's been running for several weeks now, and I don't think I've mentioned it really once, apart from in passing, is mention a little bit of the fun we've had in Fallout.
Oh,
I'm running a Fallout campaign. It is not 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. It is the 2D20 system from Modifius. And it's a lot of fun. And it's in my opinion, it's probably the closest approximation of a TTRPG rule system mirroring a video game system. Like everything you expect, especially in Fallout 4, modding your weapons, scavenging for equipment, turning it into stuff, crafting, all that stuff is there. Action points, your attributes are the special attributes, just like in the game.
Yep.
So it's very one-to-one. And so the key thing for me and for my players is to try and get the feeling of Fallout right, because it's a weird little mix of truly horrifying, truly violent, whimsical, hilarious, and everything in between.
Old-timey sort of vibes as well.
Old-timey, yeah. So yeah, playing a Mr. Handy has been fascinating. He does a great turn as the voice of the Mr. Handy too, and he has a flamethrower, as any good Mr. Handy should have, especially those taking care of young children. If you've played Fallout 4, and he's become a bit of an in-game in-joke that he solves everything with fire.
That's great.
In the most recent session, sorry, go on.
No. Please, go ahead. Finish.
In the most recent session, to put in context some of the chaos that's been had. It's winter in the Commonwealth. It's a freezing nuclear winter. Some of the snow even glows. It's that bad.
Ooh, wow.
And they were traveling from one location to another, and there's a whole system for potential random encounters, and they came across a random encounter, which in this case was some desperate human survivors who were looking for food and shelter, and they were actually traveling as guards for a Brahmin caravan. So they were laden with supplies. They had 4 Brahmin, a few NPCs, and themselves traveling across, having just completed a mission.
Right.
And these desperate survivors were basically saying, look, please, you've got all that food, you've got all that gear and those supplies, you've even got 4 Brahmin, you can spare a Brahmin, give us something. And the players turned them down and said, look, just, you don't want this trouble, just leave, turn around. And in the end, the survivors were too desperate to do that.
And attacked
And turned things violent, and went straight for the Brahmin. Like their target was a Brahmin. Bring it down. If it's dead, they can't use it. We'll keep it, and they just go on their way.
Sure.
Clearly not thinking straight that if you kill one of our Brahmin, we're probably going to kill you back. And which is basically what happened. They drew weapons, but it ended very quickly because one of the NPCs pulled out a double-barrel shotgun, and which has a spread capability, as you would expect, fired it at trying to shoot one of the players, got a complication, which is a mechanic in the game, ended up blowing their own friend's leg off and half injuring a Brahmin as well, which very quickly turned the tables as the rest of the players dealt with these poor survivors very quickly. And it went from, desperately upsetting, these poor people just want food, to horrendously violent, to immediately funny, to kind of leaving that site, stripping them of everything they had. That took the double-barrel shotgun, realized they really did have no food and no supplies, and left them in the background where previously they'd seen a corpse sitting in a deck chair with a pair of sunglasses on and a frozen bottle of wine. That was from earlier in the session. And
that's
so I ended the session.
Quintessential Fallout experience.
Yeah, and they left that. They stripped the bodies. They left. They continued on to their location, and we left the session. I do this a lot. Sort of, we pan back across the wasteland, across the red snow angels of the survivors you've left in the snow from your encounter, to a deck chair with a corpse with sunglasses staring out into the frozen wastes, and then played one of the classic tunes you heard.
It's all over, but the crying. Dude, exactly. Whether you're watching the Amazon Prime series or you are playing a Fallout game, that feels like the quintessential Fallout experience. Like a bad interaction, some charisma checks are failed, violence erupts, a limb gets amputated, and blood sprays everywhere. And then you're like, all right, let's pick through the loot and move on, because that's the wasteland right now. That's brilliant. Yeah. That's so good.
It's great. And that was a random encounter. That was nothing to do with the main
It's just
story.
an organic way for that to happen, which is brilliant, which means the system very much supports that sort of narrative, which is great.
Yeah. It's great. If you're at all interested, we do still have a space. So if anyone does want to join, you're more than welcome. I may
what day of the week is it?
It's on a Thursday night, so we're playing tonight. Thursday night. So if you are interested, let me know in the Discord. If you love Fallout and you're in for a new system, I can't recommend it enough.
I would love one day just to show up and guest star as a Mr. Handy doing a Matt Berry impersonation as from the show, because that would be so much fun. Just a random NPC they come across at some point, being like, "Oh no, I'm going to harvest your organs." Just that level of ridiculousness or something would be so much fun.
It's fantastic. The guy who's playing the Mr. Handy goes much more in the traditional Handy voice, and plays it. But he's got this flamethrower. He'll set somebody alight. They'll be running around screaming, and he'll respond with, "You appear to be suffering from third-degree burns, sir," and sort of just follow him around, recommending he seek medical advice, even though he's just been.
If you'll allow me, I'll cauterize the wounds.
It's bonkers. It's brilliant. It's
great.
A lot of fun. It's a great system. Check it out in your, if you're interested and you can't join us on a Thursday, go check out the system, give it a play. It's a lot of fun.
Sounds like a blast. How's your Vecna game going at this point?
Going great. Yeah, we were there last night. They've gone to the first sort of first treasure hunt location.
Okay.
And
Without spoilers, of course. Yeah.
without spoilers, and it was an attempted stealth mission that very quickly erupted into a not stealth mission, which
always fun.
Which is always fun. Yeah. Now they have to deal with a lot.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I haven't gotten there yet because I've finally hit the point where I'm like very much expanding the content that they're encountering. So we were pretty much on par for a little bit than in terms of what your players were experiencing and what my players were experiencing. And then our paths diverged, and then they re-met at some point, and now I think our paths are diverging again. And I'm having them, without saying too much, without spoiling the adventure, there is a very major hub at some point that the players reach. And I thought it was a bit of a crime to not explore that hub a little bit more in detail, considering how varied and fascinating it is. And I have basically just started adding mostly they wanted a shopping episode because it was time, so we got a little shopping done.
We had a shopping episode.
We had a shopping
episode.
Yep. It was time. They needed it. They were like, okay, we've hit a new level. We need some new supplies. The problems ahead of us are not messing around. So we did a bit of a shopping episode. There was a little bit of a misadventure. One of my favorite recurring dirty NPC merchants reappeared that I often have in many of my games. His name is Caliban, and he's a satyr merchant who unfortunately sounds a lot like Watto from Phantom Menace. I'm sure.
Yeah, you've mentioned him. He sounds great.
I've done him before. So he was around. There's always something new with him too. He's never consistent in what his latest shenanigans are. But he made an appearance, and I'm really looking forward to our next one too. But in terms of Tales from the Table, I got to give a shout out to. I'm running a private game right now on Thursdays, which is why unfortunately I can never appear in your Fallout games. But on Thursday evenings, I have a private game with a few people who've signed up about a year ago, and we've not exactly recently. I think it was a couple of months ago that we celebrated our anniversary of playing together. It's a smaller group. There's only 3 of us, or 3 players plus me, and they are doing a grand tour of the Domains of Dread, and we had a very extended campaign in Harakir, which is the sort of Egyptian setting, and they finally, after months and months and months spent there, wrapped up their adventures there and moved on to the next one, which is a very different change of pace. It's the Carnival, and if you're familiar with the Carnival at all from the Ravenloft setting, especially the newer Carnival rather than the unfortunately somewhat problematic older versions of the Carnival. Interesting stuff, great lore to choose from, but definitely needed an update for today's day and age, where many grognards I'm sure will disagree with a lot of the Ravenloft updates. Totally valid. The Carnival needed it. It had some weird, outdated, ableist sort of vibes to it. But the new one, I'm surprised they included it at all in the more recent Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft updates. And I find it fascinating because instead of the prior problems in this Carnival, the real problem with this one, minor spoilers for those who ever want to run a campaign setting in a haunted Carnival sort of setting, is that it's plagued by tricky fae that follow it in what's called the Litwick market. And my players have been following what they're starting to realize is a series of random and unfortunate accidents within the Carnival, like the trapeze artist suddenly falling from a great height and injuring or possibly dying, to a performer previously kind of entertaining crowds as a were beast or a were creature, like a lycanthrope, but actually not really, suddenly actually becoming that were creature and becoming a real danger to the Carnival. And other sort of related phenomena that shouldn't be happening, like an animal escapes from its cage and whatnot. And all of these are, of course, interconnected, but it has something to do with the Litwick market, which my players have just entered, which is this strange collection of carts and tents and pop-up buildings, all lit by these eerie blue lanterns, while hags and sprites and boggles are all milling about, making deals with passerby and visitors that are there. And the Carnival can't really do anything about it. They are just in for the experience. So We are breaching that section again tonight, and I'm very excited to see where that goes.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. The idea
If you have any ideas for tricky Fey bargains, please also hit us up in the Discord, because I always love hearing new ones and incorporating them. In another game, also a private game running for Rolldark for another company, in my Spectarian game, which James, I think you still have players in. Fair enough. There are that group just basically got outsmarted by a coven of hags. They were promised a gem that they needed, kind of a MacGuffin, and the hags each wanted to play them for a game. I've talked about this a little bit, but we finally got to the session where I played my dirtiest trick yet, which is they know that Fae can't lie, right? So they met this coven of hags thinking very much that you had to play within their rules and they would abide by the rules. And at the very end of it, unfortunately, they learned that a night hag doesn't count as a fae, it counts as a fiend, and they can lie unabatedly. So her game was to play the deck of many things until a certain card was drawn, which was the Sun card, for those of you familiar with it. And shout out to Foundry VTT, which made this really easy. They have a great card dealing mechanic now, and so even though we were all virtual, we were dealing out the cards and taking the cards randomly from the deck, and they could flip the card over and see what was on the face, and it was beautiful. And we went through 3 full rounds. I think something like 13 cards were drawn from the deck before the card was revealed in favor of the players. And everybody applauded. They had finally beaten it. We had lost a great NPC companion in the process. An Avatar of Death showed up. Another former player's character got shunted into the void. Somebody got 50,000 gold pieces worth of gems. It was just chaos incarnate, right? And then finally the right card shows up. They keep it, and they get the MacGuffin, only to realize that the MacGuffin that had been promised was a fake duplicate. It was just a green glowing gem. And I got to do the whole, the properties of the emerald that you've just gotten. And they're like, yeah, what does it do? And I was like, okay. So it's a common magic item, requires no attunement. This large green gem, this emerald, emanates bright light in a 15-foot radius and dim light for an additional 15 feet. And they were like, and then I said, oh, there's nothing else. They were like, no. It was brilliant. We had a blast. And so now they are hunting down the hags in their own lair, trying to find them and find the right MacGuffin, which
That's
is already
amazing.
proving very difficult because they almost all TPK'd to a cloud kill. It was amazing.
If you've screwing players over is something I've just done in our home campaign. They are currently in Sigil. They are speaking to some characters there to try and basically work out who the big bad is. They've been promised who the big bad is. They've made a big deal with a powerful entity in Sigil who's promised them the information as long as they do a job for them, which they've agreed to do. However, prior to this, our barbarian character had been enticed to go to another part of the city with an Arenas who he'd met on arrival, and she very charismatically invited him to a sort of place he would much more prefer, a sort of downtrodden environment that is sort of a lot more for his, rough and ready sort of enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
They went to this bar, and she said to him, there's some pit fighting goes on down here. Maybe you'd like to take part in that. He agreed to it, took on the champion of the pit fight and won a significant amount of money. I'm abbreviating a lot, but he won a lot of money. And basically, this Arenas has been saying to him, look, I kind of hoped you would die in there because I was waiting for you to be on the cusp of death to then make a deal with you. I'm going to be honest with you. That's what I'm waiting for, is for you to die. Do you still want me to stick around? And he's like, do you know what? Yeah, I'd rather you be here where I can see you. So she says, okay, I'll stick around then. But by the way, the minute you die, I'm going to give you an offer. And he's like, okay, great. Won a huge amount of money, was given the winnings, and returned to his companions. Went through this whole deal, laid out the entire plan, and then they were in the casino. Everybody knows the casino if you've run the sigil game. And they he had a sending stone from a previous encounter, and he took the sending stone out, and all the people in the casino came over, rushing over, like the security, like, look, you can't have that in here. That's a device you could use to cheat.
Right, sure, of course.
And so they brought out a mage and said, scan him, find out if he's got anything else. And they scanned down to his winnings bag and said he's got another stone in there. So he took the stone out and was like, what is this? And they looked at it and they examined it and said, well, it's kind of like a sending stone, but it's programmed to only receive. So everything that you've been doing
has been going to somebody else.
Somebody through this sending stone, and that had been placed in his winnings bag.
Brilliant.
So it had been played right from the start.
That's amazing. That's clever. I really like that. Yep. They didn't even realize it's just basically a listening device. That's the whole time that he's been bugged at the bottom of his bag. That's great. Sigil is such an interesting place now, or Sigil if you're going by the appropriate canon pronunciation, which we've talked about. But yeah, awesome stuff. I'm really excited to explore it some more. But we'll see. But we're over time, so that probably concludes. As you may have noticed, we unfortunately lost Rob and only just recently James in the process. But I think for the first time, we've had all four in probably a few months that we finally made it work. We had all four.
So yeah, it has been a long time.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I guess we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for joining us for another episode, and we'll see you next time, or you'll hear us next time. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.